Star Trek finally settles the fandom's biggest debate: which timeline has the greatest Enterprise? IDW's Star Trek comic has just offered an answer to the perennial question of which Enterprise is the coolest, as crews from two different eras and two different timelines agree that the USS Enterprise A from the franchise's Kelvin timeline has the most style, at least compared to the ships of the early 25th century. Star Trek #26, written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing with art by Angel Hernandez, brings together the Kelvin universe's Enterprise, helmed by a young Captain Kirk, and the crew of the USS Theseus, the all-star cast of the comic, which includes characters from multiple Trek generations, including a much older version of Montgomery Scott. In addition to being an immediate classic Trek moment, the scene also amazingly finds the characters coming to a consensus about which era of Trek ship designs was the best. Star Trek's most beloved characters unanimously agree the Kelvin timeline's Enterprise is the best looking ever since the first variant of the USS Enterprise's design was introduced. Trek fans have debated which is the coolest or most visually engaging. While this moment in Star Trek #26 won't necessarily quell the fandom's ongoing discourse on the topic by any means, it does possibly give an insight into the opinion of authors Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing. Or in any case, it is an amusing moment that suggests that there is a parallel to the real world. They don't make them like they used to, sentiment many people share today in the scene. Voyager main cast member Tom Paris notes that the Enterprise A has way more style than he remembers it having, while young Sulu remarks that he expected a ship from the future to have a bit more style. These overlapping opinions playfully hint at the prevailing aesthetic interests of the Trek galaxy. While it might seem like little more than a fun throwaway at first, this moment is another example of the creative team's grasp on both Trek lore and Trek fan culture. That is to say, Star Trek #26 makes this an important in-universe point, reflecting the fandom's debate, and even going so far as to envelop it into canon itself. In many ways, these are the moments in which IDW's Trek flourishes the most. While the series has become one of comics' most ambitious ongoing storylines in the 2 years of its publication so far, its best moments have been those small, vital points at which it has expanded and recontextualized familiar Trek elements. IDW's Trek highlights the expanded parameters of the coolest Enterprise debate. As mentioned, Trek fans have engaged with the best Enterprise question for years, but it was only in the past 15 years, since 2009's cinematic quasi-reboot, that the debate's boundaries have surpassed the franchise's original timeline, growing to encompass the Kelvin universe as well. The shout-out to the Kelvin Enterprise A in Star Trek #26 also serves as a tribute to the way the film reinvented and revitalized the franchise. Arguably, readers might live in an alternate timeline in which IDW's current ongoing Star Trek series doesn't exist, were it not for J.J. Abrams' 2009 Trek and its sequels. For decades, one debate has raged across Star Trek fandom: which timeline features the best version of the USS Enterprise? From the sleek, futuristic designs of Star Trek, the original series, to the modern interpretations seen in the reboot films, the many incarnations of the iconic starship have left Trekkies arguing over which version truly stands out. But now, as the Star Trek universe continues to expand, fans may finally have their answer. Since the Starship Enterprise first graced television screens in 1966, it has become one of science fiction's most enduring symbols, synonymous with exploration, diplomacy, and, of course, adventure. The USS Enterprise, in its many forms, has served as a setting for countless interstellar missions, technological breakthroughs, and character-driven stories. Yet, as different captains have taken the helm and Starfleet has evolved, each Enterprise has had its own personality and unique design. From TOS to the Next Generation to J.J. Abrams' Kelvin timeline, every version brings something distinct to the table. But which one has had the greatest impact, the most impressive design, and ultimately reigns supreme? The original USS Enterprise, NCC 1701 Prime Timeline. There's no question that the original USS Enterprise from Star Trek, the original series, holds a special place in the hearts of many. This starship, captained by James T. Kirk and crewed by the likes of Spock, McCoy, and Uhura, embodies the spirit of classic science fiction. The Enterprise was a symbol of optimism during a time of political unrest in the real world, showcasing what humanity could achieve in the future. Designed by Matt Jeffries, the original Enterprise was ahead of its time, featuring a simplistic yet futuristic look that emphasized functionality over flair. The saucer section, paired with the twin warp nacelles, became an instantly recognizable silhouette. Despite limited special effects of the 1960s, the ship's design effectively communicated a futuristic vision while inspiring countless subsequent starships, both within and outside the Trek franchise. While some fans argue that this version lacks the technological polish seen in later iterations, others appreciate its practical simplicity and the charm of its retro aesthetic. The original Enterprise has become more than just a ship, it's a symbol of Star Trek's beginnings, making it a strong contender for the best version. USS Enterprise D, the next generation's legacy. Next up is the USS Enterprise D, featured in Star Trek: The Next Generation and commanded by Captain Jean-Luc Picard. With its introduction in 1987, the Enterprise D presented a more sophisticated and advanced take on the Federation's flagship. With a larger, sleeker design, the Galaxy-class starship symbolized the Federation's progress and peaceful ideals. This Enterprise wasn't just a warship, it was a mobile research facility, a diplomatic vessel, and a home to over 1,000 crew members and their families. The Enterprise D's size allowed for a host of new luxurious features, such as the holodeck, a main bridge with a more open design, and larger quarters. It was the first starship to blur the line between military power and peaceful exploration, offering a clear message that Starfleet was not about conquest, but about knowledge and diplomacy. The Enterprise D has one of the longest runs in Trek history, appearing not just in TNG, but in subsequent films like Generations. Its destruction in that film was a devastating moment for fans, solidifying its legacy as one of the greatest ships in Starfleet history. Some argue that the ship's larger scale makes it less maneuverable, but the sheer impact it left on the franchise is undeniable. USS Enterprise, Kelvin Timeline in 2009, J.J. Abrams reimagined the Star Trek universe with the reboot films, introducing a new timeline and with it, a new Enterprise. While many fans were skeptical of this reinterpretation of the beloved starship, the Kelvin Timeline's USS Enterprise quickly found its place in the pantheon of iconic ships. This version of the ship kept many of the elements from the original series, like the circular saucer section and twin warp nacelles, but it received a massive technological upgrade. The rebooted Enterprise had a more industrial, modern aesthetic with sleeker lines and advanced weaponry, befitting a 21st century audience's expectations for cutting-edge sci-fi technology. The Kelvin Timeline Enterprise also introduced innovations in scale and combat. The ship was much larger than previous versions, reflecting the cinematic spectacle of the films. It also demonstrated greater speed and power in battle scenes, making it the most formidable Enterprise in combat situations. While traditionalists might argue that this version is too far removed from the original vision of the show, it certainly made an impact on modern audiences. USS Enterprise, the tactical evolution. Finally, we must consider the USS Enterprise E, introduced in Star Trek: First Contact and commanded once again by Jean-Luc Picard. This Sovereign-class starship was designed as a tactical evolution from the Enterprise D, reflecting the need for a more battle-ready starship in light of the threats posed by the Borg and other adversaries. Sleek and agile, the Enterprise E was built for both exploration and defense, representing a balance between the ideals of peace and the practical need for protection.